Hello there, and welcome to the next chapter in Olina and the Big Wish. I hope you enjoy. Chapter 6. In the Dark Forest. She took the golden necklace from the little pouch and held it up to the light again. It shone brightly, and the hair pendant too. It was beautiful and extraordinarily detailed, with the eyes, hair, long ears, and little tail. She opened the locket and put it on, and carefully put it inside her blouse. It felt completely weightless, even though she could still feel it around her neck. Then she took one last look around the magnificent spring forest and found the magical soap bar. She braced herself, as the dark forest wasn't a nice place to be. She thought of the trolls who needed their ceremonial drum to welcome the new clan member who would be stuck without his family if she didn't succeed. She took the soap bar up to her nose and took a long, good whiff and thought of the last time she was at the dark forest to rescue Flora. It smelled of damp, rotten leaves and something else she couldn't quite put her finger on. Then everything started to spin and spin until she couldn't see anything but a light green blur. Then the blur turned into a brown-greenish world, and she found herself in the dark forest. She wasn't far from the well where she escaped through the last time she was there. Curiously, she went over to examine the well. The bucket still hung from the top and dangled lightly in the wind, like a bell without a sound. Down the well, the water was blank and calm, and she could see her own reflection. She noticed how she changed since last year. All these wonderful adventures had made such an impression on her life. Suddenly, there was a commotion between the trees further ahead. She ducked behind the wall and observed all the hubbub in the distance. It was a whole procession of dark elves who walked in while arguing, and one after the other hauling big brown sacks. They looked like little twisted elves who had stolen Christmas. Little Grinches, Olina thought to herself with a shiver. One of them stared over at the well, and she swiftly ducked behind it, hoping she was not found out. A few moments later, the arguing and commotion started again, and she exhaled with relief. The sounds became more distant, and she dared to look up once more. Like last time, it was grayish and semi-dark in the dark forest. Nothing welcoming about this place at all. She hurried behind the nearest tree and zigzagged behind the elf procession, sneaking as not to be seen or heard. She did not want to lose them, as she didn't know this place very well. Also, she was quite sure these dark elves had something to do with the stolen drum. What was in those brown sacks? They looked a little bit like Santa's gift sack. She hid behind a tall white tree as not to be seen. The dark elves had stopped. A couple of them were gathering wood for a fire, still arguing and squabbling. Olina was close enough to hear what they were saying. She held her breath while pricking up her ears. She hoped to get some information on who had the drum. At first, They just argued about who was the cleverest of them all. They were apparently on their way to some big tournament of sorts. One after the other, they were boasting and bragging about who had stolen the most precious item and in the cleverest way. Olina was starting to get uncomfortable, hiding behind the tree, still trying to hear what they were saying. Suddenly, she caught an important word: drum. She got so excited and moved a step backwards, treading on a dry branch. Crack, it said, and she held her hands up to her mouth as if she had said the sound herself. The dark elves stopped their blathering all at once and looked towards her. She was well hidden behind the tree, and shortly after they resumed their bickering. Olina exhaled and tried to listen again. After a good long while, they talked of the drum came up again. It was the smallest of the dark elves, and when Olina dared to peek from behind the tree, she saw that it was Elif, the dark elf, who had kidnapped not only Flora last spring, but also herself and Berg, her best friend.